Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to MST.TV. This is Nishi here bringing you all another Market Watch episode. So today we are taking a look at some cards that have jumped to some pretty ridiculous prices as of late. With some, it's cards that are getting new support or are in some way becoming more meta relevant in the near future. But with others, it feels like they're being bought out just because they're high rarity versions of cards and people don't want us average Yu-Gi-Oh players to be able to have nice things. So of course what we're going to do is break down some of these crazy price spikes and identify whether these cards are things that we should be looking to buy, sell, or just hold on to. Let's get started. So the first card that we're taking a look at here is Ultimate Rare Book of Moon from OTS Tournament Pack 13. This card has only been out for a few weeks, but it has basically already seen two buyouts. A few days ago, we saw this card spike up to almost $400 and then settle back down to around $115, $120, but it was actually just bought out again yesterday and is once again at the $270 lowest mark on TCG Player at the moment. Now, of course, Book of Moon isn't a meta relevant card and it hasn't been for about a decade or so. So this buyout doesn't have any sort of real meta implications unless it's a secret tech that someone is running that the rest of us don't know about. Rather, Book of Moon is something that is a really iconic collector's card and is a staple in GOAT format, and a lot of people probably assume that it's the type of thing that will see a price spike in the future and they're just trying to move that timeline forward. Now, it is the second most expensive version of Book of Moon, just after the Champion Pack Super Rares, so it's definitely the type of card that could continue to see multiple buyouts moving forward. Really though, I think that a big factor is the fact that with such limited access to OTS 13 right now, the supply just isn't really on the market for Ultimate Rare Book of Moon, so we don't see as much of the usual undercutting amongst different sellers. Of course, when we do have things start to open up again and people are able to go back to their locals and open up more of OTS Tournament Pack 13, I would definitely expect to see the price of Ultimate Rare Book of Moon, as well as the prices of Ulti Dweller and Ulti Rafflesia, settle back down to where we would expect your usual OTS Ultimate Rare to go. Even in the long run, if you're going to spend money on a high rarity Book of Moon, I feel like you may as well buy the super rare if you're going all out. So this is kind of a questionable long-term hold for me as well, because I'm not sure just what the ceiling on this card is. I would suggest that if you can sell it soon while it's at one of its higher price points, even if it's around the $200 to $250 mark, I would offload them and not take the gamble for the long run. Alright, next high rarity card that we're looking at here is Trishula, Dragon of the Ice Barrier. So I don't know what exactly prompted this buyout, but the highest rarity versions of Trishula, the Dual Terminal and the Ultimate Rare, have both spiked like crazy. So for DT, you're looking at around $400 a piece, and for the Ultimate Rares, you're looking at about $270 for the lowest copy on TCG Player at the moment. Obviously, these prices are pretty insane since we're used to seeing them at about a third of these price tags. Now, it is possible that because this is technically an Ice Barrier card, and with Ice Barriers winning the Structure Deck poll over in the OCG, that people think that this will be an even stronger card than it already is, which I guess is possible. I don't really see how that would happen, but I would argue that without knowing a single piece of what the new support is, I don't think that anyone would go this far out of their way to buy out a card for unproven support. More realistically, I think that this card could just be really something similar to Book of Moon, where it's one of the more iconic cards in the game and people want to go ahead and buy out the highest rarity of the cards, whichever one's the hardest to find. This card is always going to be used to some extent in the meta, right? Even if it is limited and you just get to rip that one card out of your opponent's hand, forcing your opponent to be down one resource is still pretty powerful. The fact that these versions of the card are just really that difficult to find means that it will take a long time before they settle back down in price. Now, while I do think that over the next very short little while the prices could cool off a little bit as maybe a few people try to undercut each other, I think that this is actually pretty indicative of where the prices of these high rarity versions of Trishula are going to go in the future as one of the most important cards from the Synchro era. So if you're looking to sell off the card now because it's worth more and you want the cash, then go ahead and move it, right? But if you're thinking of buying them back later at a cheaper price, I actually think that in this case you are better off holding on to it because I don't see the prices dipping that much lower in the future. Next up, let's have a little bit of a discussion about Eldlich the Golden Lord. Now, this card is currently sitting at $125 a piece as a short print out of Secret Slayers, and I think we can all acknowledge that it's a fairly expensive card. However, I would actually argue that this card has a lot of potential to increase in price as a key card from a deck that definitely has tier 0 potential. When we look at the meta right now, there are currently two top decks of the format. Eldlich, and Adamancypators. We could argue that there are other things like Salamangrate or Madolche, but chances are, if you had to play a big event and you didn't have any sort of budgetary restrictions, you would probably be playing one of those two decks. I also think that with Adamancypators, it's fairly certain that when events do start back up again, we will see Block Dragon hit on a ban list in some way, and that is going to severely handicap the Adamancypator deck. What that leaves us with then is the potential for Eldlich to establish itself as the singular best deck of the format, head and shoulders above the rest. We do still have Dragma and the Flame Noble Knights coming out later this year, but I think that some Eldlich variants actually run Dragma cards themselves, so it could just strengthen them. But we also have the Numeron cards supposedly coming out in Battles of Legend Armageddon, which could absolutely push Eldlich over the top. Now, with all that being said, if you're planning on picking up Eldliches anytime soon, I actually think that now is the time to do it, while we're in like an extended off season of sorts, even if we don't know when events are going to pick back up again, because we know that they probably realistically aren't going to hit Eldlich on a ban list until we've had a chance to play with the cards. We'll almost definitely see a spike in Eldlich's price once events start back up again, and then again if Block Dragon gets hit, assuming that we don't hit any Eldlich cards as well. As a brand new card that hasn't had its chance to shine at the YCS level or anything, or even the regional level, I think that this card is even safe from reprints for at least another year. So if you're planning on doing it anyways, I would go ahead and make that investment now before Eldlich has a chance to spike up. Now, speaking of Numeron cards, we're going to talk about a couple of cards here that are potentially going to be relevant when the Numeron cards come out, which is theoretically going to be in Battles of Legend Armageddon. In Numerons, the idea is that you somehow turbo your way into the Numeron field spell, summon out a bunch of rank 1 Xyz monsters from your extra deck, and then make Utopic Zexal to stop your opponent from playing the game at all during their turn. Now, as it turns out, the Numeron Gate monsters also are machines, and none of the Numeron cards prevent your monsters from attacking, which means that you could potentially just attack your opponent for a ton of damage and OTK them in the right situation. Now, the Numeron Gate monsters that you summon all have effects that allow you to detach a material from them when they battle to double the attack of all of your other Numeron monsters, and the field spell allows you to not have to detach materials as cost to activate the Numeron monsters' effects. So basically, doing this in conjunction with limiter removal allows you to double the attack of one of your monsters like 5 times, and the last monster ends up attacking with 16,000 attack points or something crazy like that, helping you to set up OTKs out of nowhere. Now, limiter removal does kind of feel like overkill, but you can definitely attack over something like Borreload Savage Dragon and still OTK your opponent, so that's really funny. It's not something done in every deck that plays the Numeron engine. I think it's just in pure builds. Now, limiter removal does have multiple printings, so don't worry if you don't have your copies. They should still be relatively affordable if you're okay with playing a lower rarity like the commons. It's just worth noting that a couple of the high rarity versions are trending upwards in price, as the Hobby League Ultra Rares are from $8 to $9 a piece, while the Retro Pack Super Rares are just over $5, though I would expect these prices to go up as soon as the Numeron cards from the set are officially revealed. I don't know how much success we will see from the Numeron cards here in the TCG, whether that's in conjunction with another strategy or as a pure deck, but I do think that it will be much better as an engine than a pure deck. So I think that ultimately this card won't be seeing a huge amount of play. I would hold on to them for now, wait for the card to catch people's attention once the cards are confirmed, and then sell them off at the inevitable price spike. Alright, so also related to Numerons, but this time it's a card that I think is going to see an increase in play because it's useful against the new Numeron cards. It is Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. So the Numeron stuff does exactly one thing, and that is attempt to summon 4 different Numeron monsters out of the extra deck all at once. However, it is dependent on having the field spell out, and the way they'll typically do it is by activating the field spell Numeron Network and then copying the effect of Numeron Calling by dumping it to the graveyard as cost. Now, because it's a cost to do this, you can't ash the field spell, but in order to successfully copy the effect, you do have to control Network while it's resolving. So Ghost Ogre becomes a very useful hand trap to stop the engine in its tracks. In addition, Ghost Ogre is potentially useful once again against something like Dragon Link, since you can hit Boot Sector Launch or Guard Dragon LP with this card in order to prevent the deck from really taking off. Fortunately, there are several different lower rarity versions of this card, between the Megatin Supers, the Dual Devastator Ultra Rares, and the Legendary Collection Kaiba Ultra Rares. However, it is the high rarity versions of this card that we'll want to keep an eye on moving forward. So right now, Ultimate Rare Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit is about $120 a piece, while the Secret Rare First Editions are around $45. This honestly isn't horrible, and I'm thinking that if Ghost Ogre does see as much more usage as I think it will, we'll see the Ultimates trend upwards to around the $200 mark, and then the Secrets even move up to the $60 to $70 mark that Secret Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring is currently at. Now, as a Ghost Girl, it's obviously a really collectible and really well-liked card by the player base, so the fact that it's going to be meta relevant could really just push it over the top in terms of value. If you're looking to play the high rarity versions, then I would recommend grabbing this card now before it does spike. If not, I would at least make sure that you have your lower rarity versions on hand now before they gradually start disappearing from the market. Next, let's take a look at Inzektor Exabeetle. So no, we don't actually have any Inzektor support confirmed or coming out or anything like that. This one is actually much weirder than that. So I'm sure that by now we all know about the Dragon Link OTK, which uses Earthbound Immortal Aslapiscu and Exploder Rocket Dragon to burn your opponent for exactly 8,000 damage. Well, apparently there is also an Adamancipator OTK that is running around that does very similar things with Aslapiscu and Black Garden, but instead of using the Exploder Rocket Dragon, they go into Exabeetle and re-equip the Aslapiscu and then send it to the graveyard again to burn your opponent for another 4,000 damage, which is exact game. Now, this definitely isn't the smoothest way to OTK your opponent, since I think you have to use like Raptite and Coral Dragon to make the Exabeetle, and if the Exa gets impermanenced or anything like that, you are in a really bad spot, though I guess theoretically they would probably have tried to Imperma you earlier in the combo. I don't really know. Now, Exa does only have one printing from way back in Order of Chaos, and it is currently carrying a $13 to $14 price tag. I actually think that normally we would see a bigger over-exaggeration from the market and see this at $20 to $25, but this FTK is a bit lesser known. It's definitely not as consistent or impressive as some of the other FTKs that we've seen in the past. It has kind of fallen under the radar a bit. Either way, I'd probably offload this card now, while at least there's a reason for people to want it, since the card being reprinted at all would immediately tank this card's value. Alright, so now we are on to Striker Ace Shiruku, specifically the Ultimate Rare version from OTS Tournament Pack 9. Now, I actually wasn't aware of this. Ultimate Rare Shizukus are apparently at the $65 mark, which is kind of crazy because I feel like not that long ago they were at around $40 to $45, and I had no idea that they went up past that. When I think of expensive Sky Strikers, I think of Ulti Kagari as a card that was reasonably priced when it was at 1, but naturally sort of spiked when it went to 3 and then kinda always stayed high. Shizuku, on the other hand, has always been at 3, but it's actually the most expensive Sky Striker Link monster. We haven't seen too much from the deck since Ryan Yu topped with it a little while ago, though I think it might have seen one top from over the last couple of weekends or so. I'm inclined to think that these cards are going to tank in value because I don't really think that Sky Strikers have much of a place in the meta with Engage still banned. However, it also makes me curious about the price of something like Hayate, which is also typically played at 3 in the Sky Striker deck. While it's maybe not as important as Kagari or Shizuku, it is still an important piece to help the deck unbricked and play a little bit more consistently. Kaina is still definitely a one-of, so I would expect her to be the cheapest, of course, but I think that Hayate is definitely something that I would be keeping an eye on. I know that in the OCG, Sky Strikers are still a really popular deck, so it's definitely possible that there is a demand over there for the Ultimate Rare Sky Strikers that we have in the TCG, since TCG cards are legal over in the OCG at their locals and whatnot, and the ultis all do look really nice. I don't really have a suggestion here one way or the other, since if you already have the ulti Sky Striker cards, you probably really like the deck and you want to keep it, but they are cards that you should be keeping an eye on moving forward if either you're holding on to an extra copy or two, or you're wanting to pick up the deck in max rarity in the future. And finally, guys, we'll talk really quickly about a couple of different Prank Kids cards. So just a couple of days ago, we had a new Prank Kids card confirmed to be coming out in Phantom Rage, which is the upcoming set for the OCG, and it really helps fix a big problem with the Prank Kids deck. Now, the deck has really struggled if you weren't able to get multiple Prank Kids into your opening hand to fuse with. The deck sort of struggled to just get going, However, now with a Link 1, you are able to open with any single Prank Kid monster and then trigger its effect by linking it off, giving you access to a second Prank Kid out of the deck and allowing you to start off your combos. This is obviously a really big boost for the archetype, which is honestly really confusing if you're not familiar with what the deck tries to do or how it wins games. Now, the deck is definitely more of a rogue strategy and hasn't been relevant for a while, but it did take first place at a YCS a couple of years ago. I think it was like YCS Milan or something. The deck still does have its weaknesses, right? The deck is still very vulnerable to a card like Nibiru because it can't put up interruptions very easily, and instant fusion, which was always a big strength of the deck before, is now still limited, so it's not like the deck is immediately going to jump to tier 1 status, but it definitely did catch the attention of a lot of people, especially those who knew what Prank Kids did. As a result, we have seen the price of Prank Kids Place, the field spell, jump from $5 to as high as $15 to $20, but now settling at around the $12 mark, and then also Prank Kids Dodo Doodle Doo up at the $5 to $6 mark as well. I would still be careful if you're looking to pick up Prank Kid stuff, because I actually think that there is a very solid chance that the archetype could be reprinted in the 2020 Megatins. We saw it last year with Sky Strikers and For Hire, so I definitely think that we could see archetypes from side sets be included in this year's Megatins as well. Maybe something like the Prank Kids or the Evil Eye or the Infinitrax. I don't think that the price of the Prank Kid stuff is really going to stick too high, so I would offload them for profit if you can, just in case of the reprint. Though really the price jump wasn't that significant for you to have made a huge profit on them. If you're wanting to play the deck or keep it, it's probably not worth going through the effort of selling it and then buying it back again later, especially if you're holding on to the max rarity version of all the cards, right? So just hold on to your core and move whatever extra copies you happen to have been holding on to before. Alright guys, that is it for today's episode. I know a bunch of the cards that we saw in today's episode were really ridiculously priced, but that's just kind of the way that Yu-Gi-Oh is now. If there's a chance that a certain card is relevant, if it's in a high rarity, or if there's only 1 or 2 printings of the card, chances are that it's gonna jump like crazy. However, we do have to remember to pay attention to the window of when is the opportune time to sell a particular card, because oftentimes a price can tank back down just as quickly as it shot up. Anyways guys, if you did enjoy this video and you found it informative, please be sure to hit that thumbs up button for me, as it does help out a ton. Also, make sure you leave a comment in the comment section down below. Let me know what else is going on with the market that maybe I missed, so that I can potentially cover it in a future video to keep you guys all informed as possible. And of course, if you haven't already, please make sure that you hit the subscribe button to get all of the latest and greatest content from both Tombox and myself here on the channel. And yeah, until next time guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.